What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be trying to answer the question, does the value of a plant reflect the correct decision in terms of styling it? There's probably a better way of saying that, but in any case, that's what I'm thinking about this morning as I look at this plant. This came from a nursery and it's actually quite old. I think it's, on the order of like 20 or 30 years old. It has a lot of character, but I'm not really sure that I actually like the character that it has. So if I look at, the problems that it has 1, 2, 3, 4 trunks in a way, if you think about this as a clump style tree. And none of these are particularly interesting. They're also not, so if I subtract one of them, so say I just entirely removed this, then I have large, medium, small, which in a 3-trunk composition could work, but there's nothing super interesting about this, and I've already actually done some splitting and carving on it to see if it increased the way, if it increased my interest in the plant, and it really didn't. About a year ago, maybe it was 2, I took this to a sale and I priced it at $250. Like I said, it's an old piece of material, but I don't actually, so I bought it as mother material to take cuttings from, and now that that's done, I'm just growing it out as a bonsai and I'm gonna continue styling it. So, is the price of a piece of material an accurate reflection of the quality of the piece of material? Out of this batch, which was about 30 trees from the same nursery, this was probably in the bottom 10% in terms of the interest that I could find in the lower trunk sections, or in terms of designing an actual bonsai out of it. So if I go with the solution where all I do is sort of wire some branches here, make a crown, or 3 or 4 crowns. Obviously 4 is not something that we normally do in bonsai, but if I go with that, I don't really see a tree here that's going to end up being very valuable. Like if I stuck it on a sales table, a year or 2 years from now, again, I would imagine that the sales price wouldn't increase significantly. And it might take me something like 10 years in order to increase the value just based on styling these branches, because there's just not a whole lot here. So does that inform the design decision for this plant? Because the other option that, as I stuck this on the table for must be the 3rd or 4th time trying to figure out what am I going to do to this thing to make it better, I realized, I could make it into a shohin and basically just come down to one of these trunks or some portion of this that's much smaller, much more compact, and then do a lot more fiber pulling / wood reduction to improve the taper and create something that's, more like that. Now, there's not a lot of movement here, but you don't always have to have movement in a juniper. So I think what I'm going to do today is really go at this thing a little bit harder than I have the previous couple of times that I looked at it, and see if removing some of these large pieces of wood in favor of creating a much, much smaller composition actually ends up making it a better plant. And in my mind, I don't have a whole lot to lose here. If it's just not that interesting, and it's also actually not a good mother plant at this point because it's not growing very quickly. I'm not getting good whips off of it because it's in a small container, and so as a piece of mother material, it served its purpose. But at this point, I think the best use of this material is to try to make a bonsai out of it, and so I'm gonna see what I can do. One of the things about this batch of material that was so less than ideal is that when I purchased it, it was all in 3-gallon nursery cans, and it had obviously been in those nursery cans for a very, very long time. And it was so root bound that I actually couldn't even slip it out of the nursery can. I actually had to take a Sawzall and I just cut the entire, straight through the pot and the root ball, cut off the bottom half of the root ball, and then started doing root work from there because it was much faster than trying to actually do the root work from the bottom up. All right, so what I'm doing here is just trying to make sure that I have a complete view of the wood at the base here. So these guys were so compacted in the soil that as a part of the original repotting, I didn't even remove all of the original soil because it's kind of buried in between thick, old, woody roots. All right, well, that's a little bit smaller. Let me give it a spin here. Now, reducing this all the way down to just sort of like a mangled stub has done something that I sort of suspected it might do, which is to kind of open up more possibilities in terms of the front of this tree. So with it sticking out like this, it doesn't really work as a front, but now with this gone, I can use angles like here or here as the potential front. I've also reduced the height of this by half. One of the things I've noticed in working with this material is that, you know, if I cut it here, the branches that are just below that point are going to be the only ones that really grow vigorously. And so now that I have this reduced down to a size that's really closer to what I'm after, so this is, you know, say about 10 inches, 9-10 inches in height, I can expect that the foliage in these areas is going to take off more. And so I'll get growth that's close down in here, and ultimately I can make something more like a shohin. Now, I at one point had even thought that I might take off this whole thing and reduce it down to a stub like that and go for something with a little bit more extreme taper. But it also might end up making an interesting composition, like a 3-trunk composition, if I grow this one up a little bit. This one's actually going to be shorter now because there's no growth up here. There's no buds on this trunk above, say, about right the tip of my finger here. And it might pop a little bit higher, but it also might not. So if it doesn't, then I can just start with that down here and use this one longer, or even start with this down here and eliminate this one entirely. In any case, I'm going to set this out to grow for a little while longer again and revisit it. So then back to our question that I started this with, which is this any more valuable than it was before? So if you thought to yourself, when I first said that I had priced it at $250, that was really expensive, then ask yourself again, is it better now? Is it closer to $250 in value in terms of being a bonsai than it was before I did this work? And I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I think only time will tell. But share your comments below about the valuation of plants, especially this one, if you think it got more or less valuable as a result of this work. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.